Good day, guys. My name is Miss Beatrice, and I'll be taking you for the subject called Computer Fundamentals, which is basically about the basics of computers, digging deep into computers. So we are going to start off with topics such as we are going to discuss about what's a computer. We are going to look into different types of computers, different types of operating systems, and different brands, and the different components of computers, what is needed inside the computers. And then we are going to look into how a computer boots up, different states of a computer, and sometimes students will get to worry when to or what type of a computer to buy. So we are going also to look at how can one buy a computer, right? Okay, so now first we need to understand what a computer. So a computer, these are machines that perform tasks or calculation according to a set of instructions. So basically computers don't know what to do until you tell them what to do. So most of the time we have to instruct the computers in order to perform what we need to for it to perform for us. Computers work through an interaction of a hardware and a software. Okay, we need to understand what is the hardware when it comes to a computer, like hardware. We also need to look at what is a software, because we cannot understand a computer if we don't understand the term the hardware and then the software, right? Okay, now the most important piece of a hardware is a tiny rectangular chip inside your computer called a central processing unit. So a hardware basically is made up of what we call a CPU, and then when you're talking of a hardware, this is what we call a physical component. Something that you can physically touch or feel. That is a hardware component, and then that's what we call a hardware. Okay, so it is made up of what we call a CPU or a microprocessor. And then when you are talking of now CPUs, it's like the brain of the whole computer. Okay, so a computer is made up of a hardware and then a software. That's what makes up a PC. So now the brain of a computer is what you call central processing unit. So now when we are talking of a hardware when it comes to a computer, we are talking of physical components such as keyboard. We are talking of something like a mouse. We are talking of something like a printer. And so these are some of the physical components that when you're looking at of a hardware, because this we can touch, a keyboard you can touch, a mouse you can touch, a printer you can touch, and then we have a desktop, okay, or the monitor. Now those are the physical parts of a computer. Okay, so now let's move on to another part of a computer. So do I need to describe what a keyboard is, a mouse, and a printer? I guess that we can catch up with, all right? Okay, so now let's talk about the software. A software, these are the programs that are installed. When we are talking of now install, this is a process of putting a software inside a computer, which is very much important. When it comes to computer languages, we call it install. Okay, we don't use the word or the term inputting, so we call it installation or installing of softwares. Okay, so now these are the programs that are installed inside the computers, and then we are going to look at different types of softwares such as operating systems. Okay, let's move forward. So now we discussed about the hardware softwares, and then what a computer is. A computer is made up of what you call the hardware and the software, and then the process of installing the software inside the computers, right? And then we say the hardware is made up of a CPU, which is a central processing unit, which acts like the brain for the computer. Okay, so now let's move to different types of computers. What are the different types of computers? Okay, so computers, we have different types of computers. There are actually several types of computers. Let's look at this. Okay, first, when we are talking of different types of computers, we are talking about analog computers. Okay, so we need to understand what is analog computer, and then we are talking about hybrid computers. Okay, so analog computers, these are the kind of computers that are being used today. So these are the kind of computers that deal with digital computer or analog computer that can perform several mathematical operations simultaneously. It uses continuous variables for mathematical operation and utilizes mechanical or electrical energy. So basically it's more on digital. Okay, and then when you're talking about hybrid computers, these are computers that are a combination of both digital and analog computers. Okay, and the digital segments perform process control by version of analog signals and digital signals. Okay, let me not go deep for a while into what is digital, and then when I'm talking about analog. Okay, but let's just first focus on what are the types of computers. Okay, looking at different types of computers, again, we have what we call a mainframe computers. We have what we call microcomputers. We have desktops. We have laptops. We have personal digital assistant, which we call PDAs. We have mini computers. And we have supercomputers and wearable computers. So basically, we have so many different types of computers. But do I really need to go into detail and explain what is a mainframe computer? Okay. Let's look at what the main computer. These are actually the large organizations use mainframes for highly critical applications such as bulk data processing and ERPs. So mainframe computers, these are the biggest computers, and then they don't really exist in many companies. Many companies are more into smaller computers. Mainframe, they are used in big companies like, let's say, Google. If you heard of what's a Google, Google is a company that deals with a lot of different things when it comes to computers, internet, and stuff. Okay, and now moving to microcomputers. This is a computer with a microprocessor, and its central processing unit is known as a microcomputer. They don't occupy space as much as mainframes. So basically, mainframe, they are biggest, largest. They are used in big companies. Okay, so now microcomputers. Okay, when supplemented with a keyboard and then a mouse, they are also called personal computers, like the personal computers that we use most every day. Okay, so let's move to another different type of a computer. So now, talking about desktop, these are also types of computers. So what is a desktop? A desktop is intended to be used on a single location. The spare parts of a desktop are readily available at a relatively lower cost. Power consumption is not as critical as that in laptops. Desktops are widely popular for daily use in workspaces and households. So desktops are these computers that we normally use in our offices, workplaces, in the households, that contain a desktop, and then they contain the box. Those are what we call desktops. Now moving to laptops, I'm aware that most of you guys own laptops, or you know someone who owns a laptop. Okay, so now what's the description of a laptop? Laptop is similar in operation to desktops. They work in a similar way. Okay, a laptop computers are miniaturized and then optimized for mobile use. Laptops run on a single battery. Okay, they own a battery or external adapter that charges the computer's batteries. Okay, those are the laptops. Okay, they are also types of computers. Now moving to personal digital assistant, PDAs. Do you know what's a PDA? This is a handheld computer and popularly known as a palm laptop. It has a touch screen and a memory card for storage of that. And most of PDAs are like small computers, handheld. You can hold it with your hands, and most of you guys have used it, maybe, or maybe your relatives have used the PDAs, right? So most of them can able to access internet. You can able to use Bluetooth or Wi-Fi through your PDA. Okay, and let's move to mini computers. In terms of size and processing capacity, mini computers lie in between mainframes and microcomputers. Mini computers are also called mid-range systems or workstations. Mini computers, I think they are not as popular mostly in our country or many offices, but as they said, it's a range between microcomputers and mainframe computers. So basically they are used in some of the companies. Okay, now let's talk about supercomputers. What are supercomputers? They are highly calculation-intensive tasks can be effectively performed by means of supercomputers, like quantum physics, mechanics, weather forecasting, molecular theory, etc. So supercomputers are used like in the weather, places where they record the weather forecast. That's where most they are used. We don't really use them in the workstations like offices and stuff. Okay, now we're also moving to wearable computers. A record-setting setup in the evolution of computers was the creation of wearable computers. So this type of computers can be worn on the body and then often used in the study of behavior modeling and human health. So now where do you think these kind of wearable computers can be used? They are used in places like military and health professionals. They are the most people that use what we call wearable computers. Like doctors, for example, they can use that, and military people, they can use that as well, because they need to have them necessary on their body, and then they can do the measurements with them. Okay, so now we discussed different types of computers. Can we able to list them, all of them? We spoke of mainframe computers, microcomputers, desktops, laptops, PDAs, or we call them personal digital assistants, and mini computers, supercomputers, and last but not least, wearable computers. Now those are the different types of computers. Okay, so now let's move on to different types of operating system. So now what we need to understand about operating systems, we were talking about computer hardware. Okay, a hardware, what did I say hardware is? I say these are the physical components of a computer. All right, physical components of a computer. And now we are talking of a software. So basically, when we are talking of now a computer, PC, it cannot be a computer. These are just hardware. Basically, a hardware without a software, it is pointless to have it. So it can only work until we install in what we call a software. So now coming to softwares, now we have to start off with what we call operating system. In short, we call it OS, operating system. Okay, and then you'll be wondering, what is a software operating? How is it different? Okay, the first type of a software that we deal with is what we call operating system. So now let's understand the definition of an operating system. So operating system is a software consisting of programs and data that runs on computers, manages computer hardware resources, and provides common services for execution of various application software. And operating system is the most important type of system software in a computer system. Just like I was discussing, that a computer hardware without this. And then this is the first software that we need to have within a computer. That's why it's a very, very much important type of system software in a computer. So without an operating system, a user cannot run an application or program on their computers at all, not even at all. Even if you want to install in a different software, for example, let's say you want to install in what you call VLC. A VLC is a software for playing music mostly. So you cannot install in a VLC inside the computer if you don't have what you call an operating system. So basically we need to have an operating system first in our computer. Okay, so let's move on. So now operating systems come in different types. Okay, so now what are the different types of computers? I'm sure you heard of what you call Windows and you don't know what are the Windows. So Windows are what you call operating systems. So now it depends on what type of a computer. You know, we have different types of computers as we just previously discussed, right? So looking at computers, we have what you call Windows. We have Windows operating systems, and we have what you call Linux operating systems. Now, what's the difference? Windows operating systems works in Microsoft type of computers. Microsoft, okay, they were made up by the Microsoft company. And the Linux operating system works in computers like, for example, Mac. Have you heard of what you call a MacBook? Have you ever heard of what you call a MacBook? So a MacBook with another, like a computer called Samsung or Linux or HP or something, they cannot use the same operating system. Like MacBook, they use what we call a Linux or what you call Unix. They cannot be the same, right? So now let's look at different types of operating system. The common brands that we have, it is Windows, as I was discussing, and then we have what you call Mac. It's one of the operating systems. Others are called Linux or Unix, as I just discussed. Okay, there is also what you call Google Chrome operating system. We have also what you call a Novo. Okay. So before Windows, Microsoft used what you call DOS. There was also an operating system called DOS. Okay. And now those are now different types of operating system. We said we have Windows, we have Mac, we have Linux, and we have Unix. On top of it, in the previous or in the past, people were using DOS, right? So now we have now different types of brands. When we are talking of brands, we are talking of versions. What are the versions of these types of operating systems? Let's discuss with Windows. What are the versions of Windows? So Windows is made up of different types. In the past, like when we started with computers, we were using what we call, there was something called Windows CE. There was something called Windows 3.x. Then we came to Windows 95. Then we came to Windows 98. I'm not sure if you have used that or you guys are still new coming up. You are just growing up. And we have 98 SE. And then at which operating system are we now? Are we at Windows 10? Yes. Now we are at 10. But we came through all these versions. So we also know Windows, there are really a lot. Windows NT, Windows 2000, Windows XP, Windows Vista. And then before 10, there was 7 and there was 8. Okay? So now we are at Windows 10. Can you just believe it? How many versions they came from the past? So they are really a lot. So you are ought to know different types of versions of Windows operating system. Okay, so now let's move to Mac versions. So what are the Mac versions? We came also from what we call Apple DOS. We had Apple System 127. We had Apple or Mac called Mac Operating System 8. Then we also came to OS 9. We also came to Mac OS 10. And now we are at Mac OS X. So different types of, as the years that are going by, we get to develop new versions. Because time is flying and technology is really on escalating rate. And it's flying. Okay, so now each year, not basically each year, maybe after 2 or 3 years, the owners or the companies that came up with this operating system, they always now develop new versions of each type of operating system. So now those are the common types of operating systems. So now talking of Unix and Linux, it also has many variations of many brands. They also evolved. Okay, and that one you will read more onto them. All right. So now talking of today's computers, now we look at different types of operating systems. So now, and computers are made up of multi-users. How many people uses computers? We have what we call multi-users. We have what we call multi-processing, multitasking, and multi-threading. So now that's what today's computers deal with. Multi-using. So what are we talking about when we're talking about multi-using? A multi-user operating system allows for multiple users to use the same computer at the same time at different times. Okay, and then multi-processing is an operating system that is capable of supporting and utilizing more than one computer processor. And multitasking, you can say you understand multitasking, doing a lot of different tasks at a different time. Okay, or different operation of softwares, processes running at the same time. And then we're also talking of multi-threading operating system that allow different parts of a software program to run concurrently. What do we mean by concurrently? It's still running at the same time. Okay, so now let's move to what we call basic computer components. What is a component? Basic computer components. What makes up a computer? A computer is made up of a motherboard. It's made up of a CPU, which is called Central Processing Unit. Okay, I don't need to complete that. It is made up of a RAM, video card. It's made up of power supply, hard disk or drive or optical drive. Okay, so some of these are part of what you call the components of a computer. Okay, so now we need to understand now the basic part of computer. We discussed already the software parts. So which one of these are softwares and which one of these are hardwares? All right. So a motherboard is the heart, just like a human. We spoke already that the CPU acts like a brain of a computer. A motherboard in this case acts like a heart of a computer. So it is the largest and most fundamental component of a PC, and every other component is attached to it in some way or another. Okay? A motherboard has a series of slots, sockets, connectors for attaching the components of a PC. And in most cases, the memory, accessories, cards, and CPU are installed directly onto the motherboard. And drives and peripherals communicate with the motherboard through wired connection. Okay, now let's move to a RAM. A RAM stands for random access memory and comes as modules in predefined amounts. It's also found directly on the motherboard. and usually in 1 or 2 or 4 slots. The memory chips store information. So basically RAM, it's used for storation or for storing information. Whatever information that you are going to enter on the computer, it will be saved first in the RAM. Okay, random access memory. RAM is used to store information for files that are actually being used by the CPU at any given time. Okay, so the computer's RAM memory is entirely different thing from hard disk memory. The hard disk stores information permanently for a long-term use, right? So now let's move to what is a CPU, Central Processing Unit. This is the brain of a computer and is often referred to as the processor or the chip. It is found under a heat sink and a fan and sits directly also on the motherboard. And the CPU directs, coordinates, and communicates with the other components and performs all of the thinking. So basically, as I said, CPU acts like a brain of a computer. So basically, it does the whole thinking of a computer in that sense, if you want to understand it much better. Okay, so it is the software that people write that translate those calculations into useful things. So now when you're talking of a CPU, so this is a computer brain. So now let's say this is you as a person here, that is you. So now the computer and the CPU, so you are putting in some calculations in the computer, right? So now they will be processed through what you call the central processing unit, and then your outcome will come out in a different form. So you enter the calculations through keyboard and stuff. CPU will deal with that, like it will do the calculations for you, and then you will get the outcome as a result. Okay, so now let's talk about the graphic cards. What are the graphic cards? Because they are also part of a computer components. The graphic card or video card translates information into the graphics and the text that appear on the monitor. Most motherboards now include a slot specifically designed for the graphics adapter called the AGP slot. Okay, this stands for Advanced Graphics Port. Modern graphics adapters usually incorporate some memory right on the card to improve their performance. Okay, so now let's look at another basic component of a computer, what you call a power supply. A power supply supplies computers with power. What is power? That's like energy. Just like a human being, you cannot do anything without gaining or putting in some energy. Even for computers, like for them to switch on, they need some power. So that's why the computers are also made up of having some components called what we call power supply, so that they are used for inputting in the power inside the computer. That's why we can able to switch on the computer. Okay, and the power supply has a fan built in to keep itself and computer cool. So you find yourself close to a computer, you see something, there's a fan. So it's made up of a fan. So because a computer, when it overheats, the computer can die. So it needs a fan, so it keeps the computer cool and the power supply cooler. So we have another optical drive. Optical drive is often called what you call a DVD. Most of you also heard of optical drive. A computer is made up of this. Optical drive is made up of, it has a DVD drive, right? It has what we call a CD drive. So basically most of the time we play movies or music via CDs or DVDs, and then that is because the computer is also having this kind of a component called a optical drive. Okay, so now, do you recall what we have looked at so far? Let's just refresh our minds with what we have discussed. All right, we discussed what a computer is. Okay, we need to understand what is a computer. All right, we have to look at what is a computer made up of? In short, we call it HW, which is called hardware. We looked at software. A computer cannot work without these two. It's made up, these are the physical components, and then these are the programs inside the hardware, and that makes up a computer. So we also looked at different types of computers. Do you recall them? Now we also looked at types of operating systems. Okay, and then we also now looked at different components of a computer. So now those makes up the most important part of a computer. So now let's look at the facts. Like some of you will be wondering, what am I going to look for when I'm going to buy a computer? Okay, what is important when it comes to buying a computer or computer purchasing? So you have to look at RAM. Okay, buy RAM that has a lesser CPU or smaller hardware drive. Okay, for Windows 7 you can buy 2 gigabytes or 5 gigabyte. Okay, we have to look at CPU or processor. A multi-core CPU is a mandatory today in desktops and laptops. CPU speed is less or important today because they are all very, very fast. Okay, when you're also considering buying a computer, you should also look at the hard drive. Get the largest you can buy, 250 or 500 gigabytes, because you will need more space. Okay, because the higher the amount of space you have, then the faster your computer will be operating. Okay, because if you have less space in your computer, then the lesser the computer will operate. All right, it will be so slow, and then it can be frustrating for you. So now, what is important to you as an individual? You will ask yourself, what do I want this computer for? General, home, or school computer? Do you need it for internet, to access emails or office suite software? So those are some of the questions you can ask yourself. And then now, when you're also thinking of buying a computer, you are thinking of a desktop, a laptop, or should I buy a mini computer? So now you have to look at your requirements. If you need it for school, then perhaps you can think of a laptop, or you can think of a desktop, then you can put it at home. So now those are some of the computer questions you should ask yourself before you consider buying a computer. And then in that meantime, I think we have covered all the parts that we needed to cover in what we call computer fundamentals. Until later.